Well, hello everyone, and it is time for another Wotv video where we're going to be looking at the most recent JP update, the update to specific characters' limit bursts, as well as finally putting Final Fantasy VIII discussion to bed, as barring anything unknown in the future, a character that might make Squall or Irving really truly shine, it's probably safe that we can finally now just say that we have a definitive answer. And the final piece of the puzzle, of course, is the new accessory that has come out recently. And that's what we are going to look at first today. So let's take a look at the Ragnarok accessory. Obtainable from the box event, this new piece of equipment is the last thing to come from the FF8 collaboration, and one that is pretty interesting in terms of discussion about how it will change each of the characters, because it does feature a bonus, and separate bonus, interestingly enough, and a unique bonus for each of the characters. So we have Vitality, we have Critical, and we have Shield. So basically a defense version. We have one with a little bit more HP, and last but not least, Critical. So if you are focusing on potentially going for Irving or Squall, Critical I think is a good choice. Vitality I think is fine for Rinoa, although Critical would also be generally good, and Shield I think is probably the best version for everybody. If you look at the crit sources for Squall, he doesn't really necessarily need a lot more crit, but 18 defense is potentially pretty nice with some of the boosts that these characters can get from certain. So personally, I like the shield version myself, Critical, and probably Vitality. Now, the universal buff for every single character is as follows: Flash resistance and strike resistance by 10 apiece. Not too amazing, but two major damage types that I think are fairly, well, they're just well represented right now. So that is valuable in itself. But each of the following characters, we'll go through the specific buffs and talk about them for each characters. First off is Squall. Now, Squall, interestingly, is getting a 200% chance for a physical damage increase of 20%, which is something that he definitely needs. He needs a way to increase his DPS. It's simply just not good enough. And as for this, 20% probably isn't going to be enough to really push him that much further, but it thankfully is a boost to make him at least better. The secondary effect for Squall is a ranged protection increase. So Squall's honeycomb barrier is something that he needs to activate, and essentially, depending on the range of the attack that is fired, he essentially gets some more damage reduction. Well, now it looks like this TMR essentially increases the capacity of that. Before it was 40%, now we are adding an extra 30% from. There's almost no entire point for this to be just a passive and not stackable. This has to be stackable, otherwise it's just pure and complete garbage. Since I don't have +5 at the moment, we go down. As you can see, we have no bonuses, so it's a little early to say that most people have tested this yet, since the box event has started running, and getting enough resources to do it is a little taxing, at least in the first 24 hours. But that is why, essentially, that for now, we're going to evaluate this as if it is stackable. 30% plus the 40% means that he is getting essentially a 70% very unique range resistance buff. And this doesn't fix a lot of the issues that he essentially would need, such as hate generation, to really benefit from this, and a bunch of other things. But I do think that it is enough to push Squall into definitely the good category. I'm not going to go so far as to say he's great or amazing, But in combination with this and the fact that his TMR is still very strong, I'd say that Squall merits into the good category, possibly a little bit better into very good if you consider the element that he's in. Next up is Rinoa's buff, just to prove. Now, Rinoa's buff is kind of weird because it's essentially human killer for magic attacks and a increase of magic debuff resistance of 100, basically meaning that Rinoa can no longer be debuffed for magic attacks. It's a very offensive boost for Rinoa, which is something that, while she wasn't exactly being used for before, her AI is quite adept to switching over from healing capabilities to offensive capabilities in the same way that Bellis is. So this is interesting if you want to build Rinoa to also deal some damage. I think that most people will probably want a survival vest. Now, of course, you could reconsider and just go with, let's say, putting Rinoa essentially being, what's the word? If we just made Rinoa a, man, I lost my train of, push Rinoa into being like support, a little bit more DPS, and then you focus on getting a TMR glove for her. That could potentially be an avenue to run this and survival vest, and maybe that's a little bit better for her. You can still get speed bonus and everything off the TMR from TMR runes. Interesting possibilities with this. So, and since Rinoa is just I still think is generally the best unit from this collaboration, probably good just to get one for her in the future if any interesting combinations end up working out. And last but not least is Irving. Now, Irving, we're looking at Human Killer, 15 when a physical attack for self, and increase attack by 30%. Completely offensive in the direction that Irving does essentially want. Now, he does have his secondary follow-up attack, and this follow-up attack is considered to be a physical type attack. So this is great for, does essentially boost everything that you would want Irving to. It pushes him into being more physically offensive and capable, and as we know from Bart's, backing human physical killer on those types of attacks just makes them more effective. So, going to say that this is something that you absolutely need to get if you are playing for the FF8 characters, and it does improve each of their evaluation. Rinoa, probably more flexible. Squall makes it a little bit more, well, it just kind of pushes him where he was going. And last but not least, Irving is more offensive, which will be, I think, a improvement for him, as his DPS was good, but could have used a bit of an extra. Now we have 3 more characters that I want to cover in this video. We'll go through them quickly. First off, Rain. Rain has gotten a limit burst increase, and more recently he has become more popular because his upgrades have been pretty good. Limit burst upgrade as of today: decrease spirit by 25, fire resistance decreased by 38%, 200% mod grants upon scoring a hit on an enemy 20% attack and 20% magic decrease for 3 turns to an enemy, grants regen of 10% for himself for turns. Now, something that people have asked is me commenting on how likely I think these limit bursts are of going off. And the fact is that if we take a look at this limit burst, it is very short range. It is not a particularly long-ranged ability, meaning that this character does have to get fairly close to be able to use it. And his actual granting effect of decreasing attack and magic off of hits, while it is essentially universal on his abilities, The major problem I have is that it activates at the end, so it doesn't immediately get any benefits. He has to survive another turn to really get this. Isn't necessarily helping him survive either. I will say that him having an AP start and being a tank means that he is more likely to survive. I rate this as okay. If you're a big fan of Rain, probably something you just want to do because it just makes him better. But overall, I find this kind of going to just be generally okay because I think that it takes too long for the effect to kick in to really benefit from it. Next up, we are continuing down the FF8 chain and going over towards Laswell. We have some gremlins interrupting. It's fine. Alright, so Laswell. Laswell's limit burst before, I think, was not particularly helpful. And one of the problems that I have with Laswell in general is that this is a character that can die really easily. Even with his barrier and everything, he kind of has been trending more toward an evadey style, and this is the same. So Limit Burst now breaks physical barriers for targets, increases defense penetration by 40, damage of 200%, accuracy decrease 25% for the targets that get hit by the Limit Burst, and he gets to ignore Sure Hit for 3 turns. Okay, a lot to unpack here. Breaking physical barriers is new. That's just generally good for a unit that's trying to do physical damage. Second, defense penetration is old, that stays the same. Damage stays the same. Accuracy decrease of 25. This is on an AoE, but it is a pretty short AoE, so I don't think it will be that helpful. Ignore Sure Hit is nice, but Ice as an evade? I don't know why. It just doesn't particularly interest me that much, and Laswell needing to stack will require probably a very specific build, and you're kind of using it as a surprise, but if he never gets off the Limit Burst, he doesn't have this, and the Limit Burst, again, is a very short range on this thing, and I think with the way Laswell just has been for the last while, he hasn't seen really any competitive play, because new characters are just better. He's going to die before he really gets this off, and it just may not help him survive if there are higher accuracy units anyway. And I think that's the case. So Laswell, I'm going to say, is a no for me. Now, so we have one okay and one no so far, and our last character to talk about is Charlotte of the Thunder Element, who is a character that has seen play recently, especially for people who don't have Alphonse, like myself. But also with Squall around, it is possible to focus on a sword grouping together in the Lightning Element and be pretty successful. Sid still has his 140 in the future. There's potential here. So what do we got? What has she got? Well, Charlotte is focused a lot, has improved, in my opinion, just really well. From her master abilities to extreme enhancement, she's become a better tank. And her Limit Burst here. Now, this Limit Burst is essentially a bigger AoE, which means it has a better chance of activated. That's already good. Now, before, 200% mod, decrease attack and magic on targets for 3 turns, increase defense and spirit by herself for 1 turn by 40 apiece. So what has changed now? It is the same AP cost. Increase her own HP by 40% for 2 turns. Increase defense and spirit by 40% for 2 turns, up by 1 turn from before. Single target resistance by 40 for herself for 2 turns. And when her HP drops below 50%, she gets a heal off of it, which is a 40% HP heal. This is the one that I think is the best of all 3 units that we're looking at today, because, I mean, just straight facts, upgrading to 2 turns is a much bigger benefit. Charlotte is already a tank, so she, much like Rain, has a higher chance of getting this to go off. But unlike Rain, to me, this kind of helps Charlotte survive better and be more on par with regular tanks. Now, 49 AP is kind of a high cost. Chances are Charlotte's going to be casting a few abilities before she ever gets into battle, meaning that she will have a good amount of AP, and I think just a combination of her survivability that she gets from this, and all the new beneficial stuff that she also is getting for a longer period of time, this is the best. Now, if you already have Alphonse, is it a reason to switch off of him? Probably not, because Strike is still at least a little bit hot. But I do think that Charlotte is a pretty good non-limited option for a ton of people. And I would even go so far as to say that, yeah, throwing some limit burst mats at her is good enough if you are interested in the Thunder element. He is a good tank, and this makes her generally better. I haven't upgraded this to max. Interesting. Now I have. Look at me go. So yeah. Ooh, wow. You can tell that I don't use my Charlotte. Guess I'll just do this right now. Excellent. Improving the character that is the best. And I personally myself, to end this video, just saying that I'm actually considering, making the commitment towards Charlotte, because effectively she is a pretty good Thunder tank, and if you were to continue with the Thunder element, this is generally good. Alright, so that is it for this video. I think we've covered about enough stuff. We've talked about it. We've talked about the FF8. Overall, Squall still is kind of a disappointment, but mostly I was hoping that he would be another Sephiroth in terms of kind of a game changer. It feels like it's been a while since we've had that, and just not yet. I don't know, maybe if he had been Wind Element or something, could have pushed, but so many should've, could've's, possibles, and we're just gonna continue on. Because over the next few months, we got more stuff coming up. We have the introduction of the new Another Story 3, we have Halloween Salir, and we have the 4th anniversary, which we will all be celebrating together. So, thanks for watching, have a good one, see you next time.